Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for a big India Today exclusive. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, a man who has shaped not only the financial landscape of Wall Street, but is now at the forefront of redefining America's trade strategy. We are delighted and privileged to be joined at the India Today Conclave, live and exclusive from Washington, D.C., by the newly appointed Secretary of Commerce in the United States government, Mr. Howard Lutnick. Can we have a warm round of applause, please? He's the key man leading the charge in global trade negotiations on behalf of President Donald Trump. Every single thing he has done and said since his appointment has made global headlines. And this is the first time that Lutnick will be speaking to an Indian audience live after assuming this important charge. Howard Lutnick has been the chairperson and chief executive officer of Cantor Fitzgerald. He's a titan in the financial world, someone who rebuilt and led one of the most influential firms in global finance, navigating it through extraordinary challenges. Some of you may know Mr. Lutnick's brother, Gary, and 567 employees of his firm were killed in the 9/11 terror attack at the World Trade Center. The offices of Cantor Fitzgerald were located on the top floors of the One Trade Center. Lutnick made his name and fame in the empathy and audacity with which he rebuilt this financial giant from the debris of that dastardly terror attack. He's now given up his corporate responsibilities and is trying to help President Trump make America great again. Beyond Wall Street and Washington, there's another side to Howard Lutnick, one that connects him deeply to India. He's a man who appreciates the art of a well-executed cricket cover drive, not just as a spectator, but as a father of a son, Ryan, who's played club cricket in the UK. Lutnick himself enjoys watching the odd IPL match. He also loves digging into Indian cuisine, proving that negotiating spice levels in a curry is something he can do with the same finesse as negotiating a trade deal. Howard Lutnick brings with him not just astute financial acumen, but the appreciation for the bridges that business and culture can build between nations. As he leads America's trade conversations, he does so with the confidence of a Wall Street tycoon and the pragmatism of a deal maker who understands what makes economies thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, at the India Today Conclave, join me in extending a warm India-sized welcome to the 41st Secretary of Commerce in the United States government, Mr. Howard Lutnick. It's an absolute pleasure, sir, to have you with us. Thank you so much for taking out time. The fact that you made the effort of joining us straight right outside the White House means a lot to all of us here at India Today and to the people of India as a symbol of the deep connections between our countries. We are delighted that you could join us. Thank you, sir.
I'm glad to join you today. And as you know, we are very busy, but it's a pleasure for me to be here with you today.
Thank you so much for making the effort. I want to start by talking about the big macro picture. Prime Minister Modi was in the White House in mid-February. The joint statement put out at the end of those talks suggested that the talks were substantial and substantive. Could you start by giving everyone a broad view of where you think India and America-India ties stand in the view of the new Trump administration? Mr. Lutnick.
So the Trump administration looks at trade from its historical perspective. You know, back when, from the 1870s to 1913s, America only had tariffs and no income tax. And then post the World Wars, America tried to export the strength of its economy, the power of its economy, to help rebuild the world. And India, of course, was a great beneficiary of its ability to trade with America, and when America had low tariffs, and India protected its own market with very high tariffs. And that trade strategy and that trade policy, let's call that the industrial policy of America, is about to change. It's been 80 years since that was set in 1945, but it's time for that to change, and President Trump is thinking about it from the term reciprocal. How you treat us is how we would like to treat you. And I would like to tell you that India has some of the highest tariffs in the world, and that will require a rethinking of the relationship, the special relationship between India and the United States.
So you've been speaking a lot about reciprocal tariffs coming into effect from the 2nd of April. Can you give us a sense of how you see this come into play? What level of tariff is the United States looking at? Our Commerce and Industry Minister, Piyush Goyal, has been in the US this week. You've had some dialogue with him. How have those talks gone on? And how are you looking at reciprocal tariffs starting the 2nd of April?
I think what it requires is India to step out of the model that it's been in and really look at the reciprocal nature of the relationship between the great nation of India and the great nation of the United States. You know, look at it together. We have an extraordinary opportunity together, but if you include the whole world in it and you're always worried about each and every country of the whole world and how that pieces together, it would be almost impossible. So we would like to focus on bilateral conversation just between India and the United States, bring down the tariff levels that India has that protects, you know, some of its areas. But remember, your protections are for the world, and really look at the opportunity of trading with America in a special way, in a unique way, to trade with the most powerful economy in the world and the largest consuming economy in the world, which is also very, very important.
So we've already seen the Modi administration proactively reduce taxation on the import of big motorcycles, the import of bourbon. So are you seeing progress in the way that you would have imagined? Because if a bilateral trade agreement is to be signed between you and Minister Goyal by fall, there is very little time to be able to actually get that done. Do you think it's possible given the time frame at play?
Well, if the time frame was designed to do motorcycles and bourbon and this product and this product and this product and this product, you're right. It would take forever, forever. But because India is so gigantic and the United States is so gigantic, the right way to do it is a macro, and that's why we think we can get it done. The United States is interested in doing a macro, large-scale, broad-based trade agreement with India that takes everything into account, and that, I think, can be done. It will require a different kind of thinking, big thinking, things that your prime minister can do, because your prime minister has a great, Prime Minister Modi has a great relationship with President Trump. That was obvious when we were all together. I was there at the meetings. I was there at the lunch that we had together. I've spent time with your ministers. But it's time to do something big, something grand, something that connects India and the United States together, but does it on a broad scale, not product by product, but rather the whole thing. Let's bring India's tariff policy towards America down, and America will invite India in to have really an extraordinary opportunity and relationship with us.
Some of what America has been pushing for example, lowering the import duty on some agricultural products, would be politically suicidal for Prime Minister Modi if he ever went down that route. So as a friend and an ally, how does America look at the sensitivity? Because you've got millions of farmers and you've been to our country. If he actually reduces trade tariffs on agricultural produce in the way has been suggested by the US, that's goodbye to any government in power.
Well, I think the idea is to truly understand, you know, the good thing is your government truly understands your market and we understand ours. And the key is to try to find that place. So yes, the Indian market for agriculture, it has to open up. It can't just stay closed. Now, how you do that and the scale by which you do that, maybe you do quotas, maybe you do limits. You can be smarter when you have your most important trading partner on the other side of the table. You can't just say, as you said, oh, it's off the table. That's just not an attractive way of doing business. The right way to do trade, the right way to do business is to put everything on the table, but do it smartly and do it thoughtfully. Maybe certain products have quotas. Maybe certain products have limits. Maybe certain products you do in certain ways. And then we do the same thing on the other side, and we craft an agreement that is sensible between the two of us.
Some of the tariffs that the United States has announced are potentially inflationary for American customers as well. I was reading a research report which suggested that for every 10% increase in tariff, there's a 1% increase in consumer price inflation. So you're also accountable to American people and the price at which they buy products domestically. How concerned are you about the inflationary impact of the moves that you're making on tariffs, sir?
Oh, I'm more concerned about the things you read. There is no inflation from tariffs. As you know, I mean, India has amongst the highest, if not the highest tariff rate in the world, the second highest tariff rate in the world. And because you have such high tariffs, do you have inflation? Of course not. Remember, inflation only comes from running deficits and printing money, right? And India and your economy and all the people watching me today, they understand that tariffs have not created inflation in India. So my opinion to that is that's nonsense.
Sir, you're also encouraging companies to make in America, whether they're American companies or other companies. Now, one of the reasons that manufacturing moved out of the United States is that it no longer was economically viable and competitive, given the high cost of the factors of production, particularly labor, for manufacturing to happen, which is why it moved to countries like China, Vietnam, to some extent to India. That reality still remains. There is some robotics and AI which can help you, but the fact that America and these global supply chains are built over decades with very sharp financial managers like yourself in your previous life looking at which part of the supply chain should be set up in which part of the world. Now, as you try and reconfigure that, A, you've got 4 years to try and do it. Can it happen? And B, the kind of impact it'll have given the realities of what it costs to manufacture in the US.
So what happens is people think about these things as if there's a level set of the world, right? If there were no tariffs in the world, no trade barriers, no subsidies in the world, then each company would try to find the lowest cost labor in the world, the lowest cost production in the world, and they would create the lowest cost. But that's just not true. There is virtually no country, if any country in the world, that does not, as you said, protect its farmers, protect this, create that. So what you're going to see is America is going to say, I want manufacturing to come back home. I want manufacturing to come back home. And if that means I need to put a 25% tariff on the outside world, I'll do that. And if that equalizes production home, that will equalize production home. Autos, semiconductors, lumber, steel, aluminum, and copper. These are all products, pharmaceuticals. These are all products that the president has called out that he wants to make sure for national security purposes and for purposes of our country, we need that manufacturing to come home. And if you put up a tariff wall, a barrier, an economic reason for people to come home, they will. So, the theory of every country in the world is free is just not true. The key is we want certain manufacturing to come home. It's going to come home because we have the greatest economy in the world. We have a giant magnet called the American consumer who buys the most stuff, buys the most things of any country in the world. We buy more than double what the 1.4 billion people of China buy. So you need to do business in America. It's vital for the world to do business in America. And some of that business needs to be built in America.
Now, the relationship between India and the United States is a very deep relationship. It's also a very wide relationship. Many sitting here would go away with the feeling that since the second Donald Trump presidency started, the entire focus seems to be on trade and on tariffs, as if that is the centrifuge of the relationship between our two countries. Is too much emphasis being laid just on tariffs and on trade? And how do you see the larger relationship, economic, military, diplomatic, between India and the United States? Secretary.
So there are plenty of levers that governments can pull when doing business with each other. You know, we talked about military. You know, India has historically bought significant amounts of its military from Russia, and we think that is something that needs to end. India is the eye in BRICS, trying to, would announce they were trying to create a currency to replace the dollar as the global economic currency of the world. You know, these kind of things don't create the love and affection that we really deeply feel towards India. We would like those things to end, and we would like trade to be more fair, and we would like to create an incredible and strong and powerful relationship with India going forward. But those particular things, for example, are on the table for discussion, and your tariffs, which are some of the highest in the world, are on the table for discussion. But I think if we do it bilaterally between India and the United States of America and leave out the noise of all these other countries, I think what you will see is we will come up with a great trade relationship with India that I think will help both India and America grow and prosper.
Secretary, there are many in India's strategic affairs circles who question the extent to which America can be relied upon and trusted as a supplier of weapon systems. Our country's history shows that at crucial junctions, the US has held back on crucial military technology. Even the GE 404 engine, which we were to install into the light combat aircraft for the Indian Air Force, has, for inexplicable reasons, been held up. How do you respond to naysayers in India who say, France can be trusted, Britain can be trusted, Russia's been a reliable arms supplier, but can DC be trusted given the level of mercurial swings we can see between administrations?
You know, if I listened to that and really took that in, imagine me saying back to you, so then you should rely on France and Britain for your defense and for the things that happen to you in the world. Oh, come on. America is the greatest military and industrial complex supplier, creator, and builder in the world by so far. You would never, ever suggest France or the UK to be your supplier. And imagine choosing Russia. Yeah, that would be a way to really create India's comfort and independence. No. America is extraordinary. Its combat military gear is the greatest in the world. Its technology is the greatest in the world. It is vital for India to stop listening to those silly people and come back and talk to the United States of America, which your prime minister did, and he did a great job when he was here. The key is let's form the best relationship between India and the United States. That is key and that is important. And that other stuff about relying on others is just noise.
Secretary Lutnick, you are at the bleeding heart of the Trump administration, the most important voice on economic affairs. From an insider's perspective, can you speak to this large, influential audience and tell us what is it like to be in the middle of the most important administration, in the midst of the biggest changes in the geopolitical order this world has seen?
It is literally the most fun I've ever had in my life by so many factors. You have the smartest person at the table, in the Oval Office, at the Resolute desk, making the decisions. He is so smart. He is so intuitive. His sense of what's right and wrong is so clear inside of him, and he gives such clear direction on what he wants to accomplish that it is the most fun. It is a challenging world out there because like we're talking about. India has large tariffs that protect itself, and it has leaned on America with very low tariffs. And that level of balance has to change. So it's challenging and it's interesting. But I have never had more fun and had a better experience than working for Donald J. Trump. It is my favorite time of my life.
Secretary Lutnick, we've been hearing important voices in the United States, led by the president, speaking of taking over Greenland, taking over the Panama Canal, making Canada the 51st state. Is that belligerence and posturing? Or, Secretary, are you serious? Are you serious?
Well, let's talk about the Panama Canal as an example, since you raised it. So America built the Panama Canal for, if you look in present dollars, about $1 trillion. So we spent $1 trillion. 38,000 Americans lost their lives to malaria building the Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter gave the Panama Canal to Panama in exchange for an agreement that says they shall not favor any nation. They shall not give a superior deal, basically, to any nation. And what Panama did is they leased both mouths of the Panama Canal to the Chinese. The Chinese were building bridges over the canal, so our military and all our boats had to go underneath Chinese ports and between Chinese ports. And then if you put an iPhone pointing both ways on a ship going through the Panama Canal, 70% of all language you saw on all the billboards and all the signs and all the containers on both sides, all Chinese. You think that's reasonable? You think that is saying I won't favor any nation? So Donald Trump says for the national security of the United States of America that is going to change. It's not reasonable, it's inappropriate, and it's going to change. And I promise you, it is going to change. The president does not say things that he doesn't think are right and he doesn't think are fair. We need Greenland for national security for the Arctic. Everyone would agree that Greenland is vital. And why is Denmark there? Because the Vikings conquered it hundreds of years ago? I mean, what does Denmark have to do with Greenland? You know the answer is nothing. So I could go point and verse of Donald Trump's thinking, but he is thoughtful. I told you, really smart, really thoughtful, and really intuitive. And these things make a lot of sense if you just spend the time and think about them and don't just sort of toss it all away as if it's not worth deep consideration.
Because you saw from the outgoing Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, saying it is impossible. It is inconceivable that Canada become the 51st state of the United States. How do you intend to go about getting this done?
Well, the people of Canada are not owned by Justin Trudeau, who's being thrown out of office in a week. So listening to Justin Trudeau is not my favorite thought for the day. But, you know, what the president says is that Canada completely, totally, and utterly leans on the United States of America. Its entire economy leans on the United States of America. It doesn't pay really virtually anything into NATO because it just hides behind the United States of America. It knows the United States of America would protect it. So tell me what part about what I just said doesn't sound like it's part of America. I know it seems extraordinary to talk about it, but if their economy is entirely based on America, it's entirely based on an agreement with America, the defense is entirely about America, then it's interesting for Donald Trump to think about what is the right answer for Canada. We will see how it plays out, but there's an enormous amount, all the young people of Canada overwhelmingly would prefer the lower taxes of America, the incredible protection of America, and the great opportunity that is America. I think if you did a poll of the young people of Canada, you'd have a different view.
Secretary Lutnick, if it is okay for the United States to take over Greenland, then what is to stop Xi Jinping from taking over Taiwan?
Well, I didn't say the United States of America was going to take over Greenland. There are discussions with Denmark, and there are discussions with the people of Greenland. It's our view that the people of Greenland would have to want to be part of the United States of America for that to happen. It's not Denmark is a negotiation. The people of Greenland matter. The people of Canada matter. You didn't hear me say something militarily. You heard me talk about the people of these countries. This is important that you remember that. So Taiwan, they don't want to be part of the People's Republic of China. So that's different. If the people don't want to do it, then it won't happen. But if the people want to do it, it's a different story. So please remember, we are the greatest democratic country in the world. You are a great democratic country of the world. We care about our people. That's the way we think. And we think the people of Greenland should have the opportunity and the option to join with America if they want to.
Before I end, sir, I want to ask you about China. We've seen the United States twice over announce new tariffs on China. Under your leadership of the Commerce Department, how do you see the relationship between China and the United States play out, and what kind of an opportunity do you think that might provide to a country like India?
Okay, and then before I leave, I'll answer that question, but before I leave, we have to talk a little bit about the gold card coming from America, okay? So I have to extend this a little bit and make sure we talk about that next. But with respect to China...
We're very happy to extend it, sir.
Thanks. With respect to China, there's two paths. Number one, China has very, very high tariffs. Very, very high tariffs. Maybe the highest in the world, the only ones who could compete with India with the scale of their tariffs. So, but let's talk about today, the tariffs we put on now. That's about opioid production and the ingredients of opioids and fentanyl called precursors. In 2019, President Xi offered President Trump that he would put the death penalty on anybody who made those ingredients. And now, in 2025, those same ingredients receive the largest level of subsidies available in China. So the Chinese government is subsidizing the production of these fentanyl precursors, and that's what got Donald Trump to put tariffs on China. End the fentanyl precursor or ingredient production. Makes a lot of sense. When we get to April 2nd, we'll start talking about a broader range of tariffs. But for this period of time, it's about opioids, and it's about fentanyl, and it's about drugs killing Americans, which has got to stop.
Let's talk then about gold cards. What's your pitch? Because at one level, there's this pushback against illegal immigrants. At the other side, there's uncertainty over H-1B visas, and you've got this new gold card. So explain, because there are lots of very rich, influential people sitting here in the audience, watching you live across our country. How do you envision gold cards play out, and why do you think this is a good idea, sir?
So the extraordinary opportunity of the American economy, the magnet of the great American economy, has never offered the ability to have a clear path to citizenship, but the ability to only pay tax in America and not pay tax on your global income. So that difference, where we're offering people, if they come into America through this gold card, they will only pay tax in America and not pay tax on their global income. And we think there is an enormous scale of opportunity of people who want to come to America, want to have this gold card, which is basically just an extraordinary green card, if you think about it. But it's in a gold card. It will have quick access to the market. It will be quickly vetted and then and approved. And these people, the great entrepreneurs, great business people, great leaders, will come to America. They'll build businesses in America. They'll drive the economic heart of America, will add value from the world in, and we will reduce our budget deficit, because Donald Trump's goal is to balance the budget of the United States of America. And once he balances the budget of the United States of America, his plan is to have tariffs and other outside fees start to eliminate the Internal Revenue Service. His goal is to drop taxes on Americans, drop taxes on Americans. He started with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, things like that for the key core of America. But his big goal is to balance the budget of the United States of America and then drive down income taxes. So if you can imagine for a moment living in the great economy of America, having a gold card in the great economy of America, not having to pay taxes on the rest of the world, but of course agreeing to pay tax in America, and being part of the greatest resurgence of an economy ever, in the greatest economy ever, I think you're going to see an enormous amount of people who would like to be members of that club, and that's called the Gold Card, the Trump Gold Card, and it is going to be incredibly successful in America.
We're out of time, but I want to know, when do we get to see you in India? You said you're having great fun. What has been the most fun so far, and how do you hope your legacy will be defined, sir?
I am part of the great Donald Trump administration. My legacy will be defined by the incredible things he can achieve, balancing the budget of the United States of America, reordering trade around the world, creating amazing relationships with everyone in the world. And, you know, I have to make trade deals with every country, so I don't think I'm traveling very far, very fast. But I look forward to coming to India, which I love. I love India. You know, I went to the first IPL final match, so, you know, I love India, and I look forward to coming. And
Which is your favorite IPL team, sir?
No way. I'm not doing that. That would not make me popular. No chance.
You can't say that's tougher than negotiating a trade deal.
Same thing. I would just, no chance.
Well, you spoke candidly on trade. You guarded your wicket on cricket. And I think a lot of people sitting here would quite empathize with that. When we started having this conversation with your office, Secretary Lutnick, if somebody had said that we'd actually be able to set up this live connection in the midst of all that you're doing with China, with Mexico, with Canada, with India, with EU, probabilistically, I would have said this is close to just 1%. But the fact that you were able to take out time in an extremely busy schedule and come and speak live to us at the India Today Conclave means a lot to us. So I want to thank you. Can we have a standing applause for Secretary Howard Lutnick for joining us here and speaking live at the India Today Conclave. Thank you, sir. We wish you all the best. And in the end, I want to quote what our Prime Minister said. You're focusing on making America great. All of India would like to focus on making India great. So maybe we can make India and America great. MEGA, that's what we're hoping for. Thank you very much, Secretary Lutnick, for joining us. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.